We're live.
We're good? Well, good morning, everyone. This is Thursday, June 25th, 2026, Warren County Local Development Corporation Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Motion to bring us to order. Yes, we're here. Let's review the minutes, prior minutes. Any comments, questions on the minutes? Seeing none, let's move forward to the financial update from Deanne.
Morning. So you have financials in your folder. Balance sheet, statement of financial position. Fund balance is 1.5 million. It's down 4,000 from last month. Cash is 304,093, down 11 from last month. That's largely the payment went out to EDC, but we have not yet collected from the county, and we paid our accountants and the accountant. Accounts receivable is 26,500. That is all due from the county, and then some late fees. Loans receivable is 424,000. Our CD investments stand at 908,000. We're still making money on those, and the interest rates have gone back up again. So I just invested one in this month's financials, and the interest rate on it already is 3.58. Up from the last one that we invested was 3.14. Accounts payable, none. Other current liabilities, that's just a legal bill that came in on late. Like they bill us a month later. Board designated fund is the same, 332,000. So to the budget, any questions on the balance sheet?
Deanne, our CD investments, we always do those locally, and the reason why I ask is I just did one at Fidelity, it's 4.1 for a year.
That's online.
Yeah, I did it yesterday. And they're full FDIC insured, and there's no
What rate?
4.1 for a year.
I mean, we have traditionally always used little things. I don't know if that's.
That's a,
Well, why don't you send us whatever entity you're talking about, we can talk about it with the various banks. We tend to move it around and try to get them to be aware of the market that they're operating in. If we think that's a compelling enough thing.
I don't know if it was Mellon or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, already I was under the impression that we got a preferred rate because as a government entity, we can access slightly higher rates. But
What's it with that rate?
okay. The statement of activities for the month, we had a seat. Well, that's actually just the regular income from CDs, but those CDs have matured in June. Bank interest is on the money market account. Our income for March was 8,739, and so a little bit over what was budgeted. Our expenses are under what was budgeted. Our year-to-date income is 43,000, still over, at least the interest we're getting. We had budgeted for the CD rates to go much lower. The year-to-date expenses are 31,000, so we are under. We can spend more money. Our net income is 12,000. It puts us 16,000 ahead of budget. The loan portfolio. This is May is the month when they reach out to all our existing loans to ask for their annual reporting. Everybody is on extended tax filing, so I didn't get anybody's taxes, but I will let them in the fall, hopefully.
We may need to address this. When I talk to accountants, they tell me that this is now the default. or it might file for an extension. If that's the case, then we may need to change the loan guidelines to say that they've got to provide us with at least an interim statement of finances, even if it's unaudited. Because otherwise, we're always operating 2 years behind.
I did get financials from some of them, and I can share the financials with you, I can show them too. It hasn't been great, the report is not great, like the response rate is not there.
Is there any penalty if they don't submit it?
So I reached out and asked that, I mean, essentially they're in breach of the loan agreement, yes, and I did mention that to them, because it got a little bit long before the fact. But in the conversation with our legal counsel, I mean, is it something that we're going to call a loan on? Like, it's not, they're paying their monthly, they are still paying monthly. So it's something that, I'm on top of it as much as I can. I am gonna schedule annual visits, and I think in the annual visit, in person, he's gonna have some conversations.
See, to me, if they borrow the money from the bank would be all over. I'm not saying we should be all over, but I think that they should be pressured to provide the financial information that we need. And I think it's for governance on our part if we don't.
So I don't want to postpone the conversation, but I think this is part of the conversation we will have later about what action we want to take with non-compliant loans. And I think any enforcement action will start to change that perception.
Right.
And make it easier, I think, for us to come at some of these, what might appear to be formalities or technicalities, because at this point, we're clearly indicating that we've got to protect the organization and its commitment. Maybe easier to do post that than pre that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I did hear from Sheila. They are still a difficult struggle with Whole Foods and Kroger's, but they are expanding into more stores. Good things are happening, but slow going. She has continued to pay with checks. They're not paying quite what they're supposed to be paying, but she's making them. The other loans are, we have 3 loans that were issued last year. They're all paying. 7 Hudson Avenue, the redevelopment, the building, the historic tax credits, the building couldn't be saved, it couldn't be used, so the building was demolished. And he's created a plan for every building, he's put forward 9 building plans. So we're working with him and different funding models that you can access. I mean, he still wants to put 5 total in the next.
Well, I think it's probably important to understand that the LDC has a vested interest now in not only helping him from a housing standpoint, but helping him because he's a loan recipient. So to the extent that this entity agrees, we would work as an advocate with them in the planning process. I want to go see Kevin so he knows that. I mean, that's an organizational role we need to play. We have a vested interest in this venture. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're telling Warrensburg what they should do, but we should advocate for the project.
They're pro-housing.
Is he gonna rebuild right there?
Yeah.
The question is how much and to what degree he will be held to the historical standard of the previous building.
There is, so your financials, there's you can see the loan portfolio, I re-added that to your financials. You're getting extended financials again. We are posting pressed financials, and the public can ask for extended financials at any point, but I think it's important for you to have extended financials for financial oversight.
Well, let me put it another way, particularly for purposes of the recording. We've provided the exact same financials in multiple formats. That which is posted, you cannot discern individual transactions. In this meeting, we will always give you the detail that allows you to see how everything came. If any member of the public deems that, they can either request it by either coming to our meeting or coming to see us, or they can FOIL it. But we want to make sure all that information is available appropriately, but not irresponsibly.
One more thing. It's been a while since I've made this mistake, but I used to make this mistake. The LDC writes checks to the EDC, and because they're LDC checks, I cash them to the LDC, I don't know why. So I basically
You deposited a check from the LDC back to the LDC.
back to the LDC. So I did it again. It's been a while since I've done it, so it just tells you how busy I've been. And so this is the second check, so I had to write us another check. But the trail is all in our bank account. And I'm telling you all.
For purposes of both the minutes and the recording, we want to make sure that we acknowledge it and we're addressing it transparently.
That's fine.
So next on the agenda is approval of resolutions and actions. First one is approve the meeting minutes. Have a motion and a second, please. David, sorry, Nancy. Back there, but thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next is the financials. David, get a motion and a second.
So
David, Peter, thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on this motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries also. Moving to EDC President Staff Report.
Well, thank you. I promised in a previous meeting we would go deeper with you on the entrepreneurship agenda and multi-year plan that Bob has helped me develop. The LDC is a stakeholder in this. This is not solely for the LDC. The EDC is also funding this effort independently, and probably along the way we will seek outside financing from appropriate sponsors of individual either events or activities. But let's just back up for a second before I have Bob go through the program. Yesterday I went over to the town of Queensbury to give them their regular update on the state of the economy for Queensbury and the larger region. We might want to bring some of that data into this group and also up at the county and raise it to the full county level. But one of the things that's clear no matter what level you look at is that the economy has begun over the last 5 years a steady, unrelenting move to smaller entrepreneurial ventures. This is not just true in Glens Falls and Queensbury, it's true in the entire county and it's true in general in the entire region. There have been more than 700 new ventures that we're able to essentially validate in the last 5 years in Warren County. Most of those are very small efforts. We do not have all the visibility yet, but we've been able to discern that those are not property holding entities. That's not somebody who set up an LLC so that they could buy a piece of property and move it over in a trust or run it as an Airbnb. What we don't know is, what's that? What's that?
Okay, I'll talk.
Interesting. What we need in order to better facilitate this transition and support it is a greater understanding. And so having started down that road with Bob, who has been supporting, leading Startup ADK, which is really the primary entry point for this, both he and I realized that that's not near enough visibility into this. It can sometimes look like we take a long time to get stuff going, and I understand and sympathize with that view, but sometimes you gotta dig in the data and not just approach this from a, how do I check this off, but actually try to understand this, not only in terms of what's going on here, but how does that relate to what's going on in the larger region or even across the country. What we've been able to discern over the last several months is what's happening here is happening everywhere, but it may be happening differently. It's certainly happening with different demographics to it. Most startup activity in the rest of the country is generated by people under the age of 30. That is not necessarily the case here. But that shouldn't surprise us because our demography is not the same as the rest of the country. We tend to skew a little bit older.
all of that helped me understand why just charging at this with the same solutions that everyone else has may not be the right approach. And I've met at least weekly with Bob over the last several months to try to peel this back. I think this is very similar to the process we went through in building the economic strategy that underpins everything we do here. We spent really 2 years trying to understand the data and challenging what we didn't expect coming out of that data, making sure that we didn't draw conclusions just because something from the Department of Labor said something. It had to be cross-referenced and validated in order for us to go execute resources against it. As an example, I would tell you that I was surprised to learn that manufacturing had never been more than 22% of the economy ever in the history of this area. I didn't believe it, and it spent months trying to actually validate that that was the case before I went and represented it to others. But in this particular case, what we have come to understand is our entrepreneurial economy is growing. Our understanding of it is nascent. And we need to think about how to approach this from several different angles to get more information so that we can then decide what to do. But we have some ideas of what some of that might want to be. And it's finally time for Bob to start to lay that out. And he's put in your packets, I think it's the last page, kind of a highlight of what these phases are. But Bob, I'll let you walk through this.
Thanks, Jim. Well, Jim and I started working together actually about 3 years ago when I took over a startup, 80K, which really, if you take a look at it, it's the only extant initiative here in the county that serves new business startups. But what has happened is the program has evolved. It's turned into I'm thinking of starting a hobby business, or I'm thinking of starting a small business, but I have no clue what to do to actually get it up and running. And so typically, the program is offered semi-annually. Typically, what would happen is you get 10 to 15 folks who would come into the program. Out of the 10 to 15, and Jim and Deanna Derwick from Washington County would evaluate the business plans and give feedback in the last class before graduation. And what we were finding is, of those 10 to 15, maybe 1 or 2 were actually ready to come and start to practically create a business. And so, Jim and I took a look at the connection between the EDC and the LDC and how people were proffering themselves, stepping forward to say, I already have a business that's going, I'm moving into the area, how can you support me? That's one path in. The other path is, I have a business concept, and I think this would be a good place to locate it. And so we took a look at things like web registrations, business permitting, and also inquiries into the EDC, LDC. And what we found is that our current program, the collaborative program, Startup 80K, which we do in conjunction with the college and in Washington County, really doesn't address any of those needs. It's an opportunity to hear from a business attorney what types of things that you should know, or an accountant, or that type of thing. But we are looking at boots on the ground businesses who really need practical support. And so Jim and I put together this 3-phase program that really has been, I think, evolving over the course of 2 years. And it builds upon the things that we've done, but it addresses what Jim just said, which is we haven't gone near enough. The other thing is there are other people who are jumping into the space, and they're saying basically, we will help you get your business started, but we're going to charge you money for it. And we really look at this as a public service responsibility of the EDC and the LDC to assist these businesses in bringing them on. We have 3 phases, and they're articulated in your document. In phase 1, which will be the second half of 2026, and I'll just go on these in brief, and you can answer any questions or ask any questions that you have. We recognize that if you take a look at the traditional board construct of the EDC, we have people who have been here for a very long time. In many cases, they have much larger businesses, places like Hudson Headwaters, Aerobank, etc. But we don't have, as Jim pointed out, we don't have that representation from the folks who are young, who are engaging in startup activity, or maybe they've moved just beyond startup. So we need feedback from them. And so we're looking at adding a couple of those individuals to the EDC board. More importantly, we're looking at creating an advisory board, which has been provided for within policy for both the EDC and the LDC, so that we can get feedback from some of these people who are engaging in this space to tell us exactly what it is that they need to do.
Let me give you some examples of that. On the board level, Melanie Weber is now our board chair. This is an example of us stepping into this emerging economy. Obviously, Common Roots is a well-known business here, but it's smaller in scale than the traditional board members of the EDC. And that has really helped inform our efforts here. Secondarily, she found in our bylaws the fact that we have the ability to bring on an advisory board, which could both act as a place where people can start to get a sense of what the EDC is and maybe develop a long-term approach to being a larger either member or board participant. But also, everything that's happening on South Street, these are businesses that have already committed. They don't need to go to Startup 80K. They're probably already members of the chamber, but they're still trying to figure out their way. You know, I'm blanking on his name, the guy that leads the,
Spencer?
yeah, Spencer. Spencer's a perfect example. There's a company that's been here for several years, his realty firm. He's represented almost everything that's happened on South Street. He's increasingly representing more and more. He's kind of slipping into the space that people like Mark Levac and Bob Sears are leaving behind. And yet he is not present in any organization, not at the chamber, he's not here. He has so much to say. He's representing people who are coming, asking for where could I build. He's representing people who've already made the commitment, trying to find their way here. He's representing people who are leaving and why. And yet he doesn't have any place to provide that. Now, he comes in here and talks to me all the time, but I thought, well, we should figure out how to channel and formalize this and get some more people like that. We've developed a list of about 10 or 12 names, and we're going to approach that first wave. I would expect something like maybe half to say they would be interested. They represent not only a variety of new kind of businesses, but they represent that strata of people that are not currently in any organization, but who we believe have significant input. There's no limit to how many people we can put on this advisory board, but obviously I don't want to put 50 people on the board. We're gonna actually invite them and convene them before our next meeting for the first time. And then we're gonna ask them how often they wanna meet and what they wanna do. Our initial idea is to do three things from them. One is to explain what we're trying to do and listen to what they have to say. Two is for them to be able to share any challenges or problems amongst themselves that there may be commonality on. I'll give you an example. The code transition in Glens Falls is vexing to many of them. Who is actually in charge? How does one navigate it? That's hard for an individual business owner to bring to bear because they have to carry the responsibility of saying, well, I'm unhappy about what's happening to me. But if 4 or 5 of them are having a similar experience and we can raise that voice, we depersonalize it and make it much more of a topic. That's an example of something that we might carry forward on their behalf. The last thing is we want to find out what would we be able to provide to them that would be compelling enough for them to want to keep coming. For instance, are they looking for updates on the regulatory environment in New York? Are they looking for what resources are available to me as a business that's already been launched? Are they looking for networking opportunities that go beyond what the chamber does locally? Like I need help connecting with people that might be a player in my industry, even if they're not here. All of those are examples of things we're going to posit to them and see what might be interesting to them. So there's a listening component, there's a advocacy component, and there's a learning component to what we're going to approach here. Based on what they tell us, that will inform what comes next. Let's talk about that.
The next item actually is, it's coming out of the fact that increasingly the CDC and LDC are looked at as regional experts. And Jim and I were up in Elizabethtown. There was a Clarkson University and Adirondack Community Foundation organization that's trying to work within this space largely for tech startups within the blue line. And there's this growing recognition that there's nobody there in the traditional space who can really assist them or who can lead the conversation. And we just went up to basically listen to the program that they had going on in Elizabethtown. And what increasingly happened is the people who are supposed to be leading in this space are coming up to us and saying, what are you doing? How can we collaborate? And so that collaboration is a third item in phase 2. And finally, there's this recognition that there are businesses who are coming to us who are looking at practical guidance. And that's that phase 4. We have about 5 or 6 who have identified themselves. And now we need to move forward. And I think some of those experiences are going to inform our activity and give us a better sense of what some of the businesses that are coming to us need so that we can anticipate their needs and prepare for those needs before they start.
Let me make sure that this is clear, because it was fuzzy to me, so I can understand it being fuzzy to others. We're not looking to go expand ourselves into places and compete with somebody else who's got an entrepreneurial program. We're recognizing increasingly that the park disproportionately feeds our economy. Every one of the people I talk to receives healthcare here. Every one of the people I talk to receives their legal advice here. Every one of the people I talk to comes to this Home Depot. And yet many of them live 100 miles from here. That's how disparate the resources are in the park. But what's probably more important is they recognize that the combination of some of my experiences as a business person and the standing of the EDC is a place for them to grab onto. And they're not necessarily saying, you must help me. They're saying, how could somebody like you help me? Like I'm trying to figure out, where should I go for next level financing? I can obviously talk to the bank manager in Lake Placid of NPT, but that's not the kind of business they normally do. Do you work with entities that do seed level funding of early stage startups? Well, we're probably a better conduit for that than the bank is. Another one will come to us and say, I'm going to move this business and I could move it to this region, but I need to know what it would be like to run that kind of business here. It might be a knowledge-based business, might be a software-based business. Is there a template I can follow as I go do that? There's 2 of them that have come to me trying to basically relocate from the city to here, and they want to make sure that the process they follow doesn't trip them up locally. It's a far less regulated environment than New York City, but it does have some unique nuance to it. Another one is a well-established business that's been here for 50 years, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate the next chapter of their business. And none of this fits into Startup ADK, and none of this can be supported by a group that gathers startups in various Adirondack towns just so they can talk to each other. They need resources. Now, I'm not sure how this comes out, but Callie Brooks, who leads the Adirondack Community Foundation, invited us to come because we've worked successfully with the Adirondack Community Foundation on a number of other initiatives. And she said, can you just participate and can you help us figure out what might be the best path going forward? I think there are entities that want to fund and support this effort, but that just don't have the reach. So maybe the best answer is for us to be part of that solution. I don't know, but we're going to wade in. Increasingly, we find that these are also the audience for Startup ADK. This last time, roughly, I think it's about 4 out of the 10 we're in County.
Yeah.
And yet they're coming because this is the closest thing they could find to getting that kind of advice. They almost always participate remotely. Okay, that's an audience for us. It's going to accrue to us. If somebody decides to build an excavating business in Scroon Lake, that is a business that, while it may be across the line, is largely going to add capacity to our regional economy. I would love to see them be successful. I don't want to see them get tripped up. If they need a little bit of help advocating in Scroon, I'll go advocate for them just like I would somebody that's on the other side of the line in Chester. Because there is nobody else to advocate for them. We don't know where this will go, but we definitely have people who are asking, which is good. Now, based on us engaging with all 4 of those sectors, we will then essentially calibrate what comes next. But we have some sense of what we want to do, which is a little bit more formal programming. We just don't know exactly how to structure it yet. Maybe walk through phases 2 and 3.
Yeah, so in phase 2, first half of 2027, 3 items here. The first one is to expand training and educational opportunities. Those will largely be half-day programs. In phase 3, we had talked about full-day programs. Again, low or no cost. We can get those sponsored by businesses to really take some of these new entrepreneurs to the next level. Jim and I have affectionately been calling this scale up. The second item is going to be to continue targeted support activities for identified entrepreneurs. And the third one is going to support engagement within the EDC, and that's to ramp up communications activities. Eric, building upon what John has done so effectively for so long, is really taking us and putting us out there. But we recognize that we have to do more in communications to make people aware of what it is that we can do, and also to seek to engage them from a membership perspective to strengthen the overall.
So let me put some context there. We would love for more people in places like New York City or Boston or Philadelphia to know that it is doable to run an enterprise here, and that there are examples of something they might find identity in that we could share with them as stories or case studies. Figuring out exactly where to channel that communication for a maximum effect is, we're trying to figure that out. Like, it's not just buying Facebook ads. I think we got to figure out how do we make that message visible to the community that we're after. These people don't go to a trade show. So, we can't just find a table and say, here, we're the Adirondacks, you should come to us. I think it's probably using the story that's emerging about the history and future of the park. Because those are people who are already inclined to, they have some affinity to the place. Maybe they recreate here, they have some family history here. If they're already in those communities, finding ways that we can tell those stories in things like Adirondack Life, or maybe some of the publications that are here, but broadcasting to a larger audience. Ironically, it may be some of the environmental groups that have a foothold in the park, but who have membership that is well beyond the borders of the park. We're still trying to explore it, but when we start to figure this out, we will be looking to spend a little bit of money developing the right, we're not talking about producing amazing videos, but we probably want to do this in a compelling enough way that it doesn't look amateurish. And we want to make sure that we present ourselves in an earned media sort of way that would be compelling. That's probably where I could see us spending some of the marketing resource that is traditionally in the LDC budget together with the EDC budget. We're going to spend part of this year figuring out how to best do that, but I would expect next year you would start to see some of that emerge. And then in phase 3, what we're essentially trying to do is to lead organizations through this and have this start to become its own momentum. It may mean that eventually this becomes large enough that this has to be launched in some other place other than the LDC and the EDC. I don't know. But for the next 2 years, we do have a game plan here. And I would expect that some of the monies that have been allocated, we're running ahead of budget now because I don't necessarily know how best to spend it. But this year we will spend some of that marketing money in this direction. And next year I think we would spend even more. Now, look, I know this sounds like a lot of arm waving. The amount of data that we have poured through and the amount of engagements that we've had with people is significant to get us to the spot. But just as important as listening to the entrepreneurs is listening to you. You are the board that governs this. You need to continue to make sure that this is inside the boundaries of what we believe to be our mission. You should feel like not only today, but any time you can share with us your thoughts about the direction or possible people or entities that you might want us to engage. We're at the front end of this, but it is going to be a real thing. And we're being asked by real credible partners to do this. I would expect that the Adirondack Community Foundation would be a funding partner once we lay out a plan. I could imagine some of these businesses, it's in Arrow's interest to figure out how they can bring people into this community who carry with them net worth and want to base themselves here. So I think we have natural partners. We just got to figure out exactly what we're asking natural partners to do. I also tell you that startup, it can no longer be our answer to this. Startup is solving maybe 10 or 15% of the problem. The biggest amount of the problem is just completely unrepresented. These people that opened up this boba tea shop, they never had anyone to talk to do their research. They did it all on their own, on the internet. And then they decided that this was a good place to come down from Plattsburgh and open up a store. And along the way, they met us and said, ooh, these guys could help us. We're glad that, like, I went and represented them over at City Hall in some of their planning processes. But they didn't naturally feel like there was a way to do that. We got to fix that. And I think this place has the ability to receive more. But people are going to tell us what it would take in order for us to do that more effectively, I think. And there's going to be some implications to this. Don't know what they are. Some of it may be hard. I was just with the mayor. I'm like, if you think that the only people who care about code enforcement right now are the people who have a building in Glens Falls, you misunderstand. The perception of whether or not this is a place that is friendly to receive is really important. And we need to think about how we're communicating and messaging around that. We may be shedding the cost and responsibility to another entity, but we still need to make sure that it's working effectively. And if it's not, we have a path to engage with it. If it's taking people months to get to building permits, that's going to send out a message that says that this place is not ready to receive. I don't know that that's what's going to come out of this, but as an example, that would be one of the roles we would have, is to go represent that view in Mass.
We have some amazing businesses here in the region. One with which I'm affiliated is Freedom Boat Club. I'm sure many of you are aware of their activity. Right now, Freedom, their dock crew was just named the top dock crew from Freedom's global network in the world. And Matt O'Hara just opened his second location just off Green Island, north of the bridge, adjacent to the Sagamore, because he just can't keep up with the demand. 500 reciprocals, that means people from someplace in the world who want to come boating. It's like the #1 reciprocal location in the world right now. People want to come to Lake George. We have a great story to tell. I'll always remember, this is kind of a summary comment. My father was one of the 3 directors of the Olympic Games in Lake Placid in 1980. We used to have a slogan that the Lake Placid Olympic Organizing Committee had. It was emblazoned on the side of the Olympic arena and just about every other Olympic venue, and it's "Welcome World, we're ready." That needs to be how we look at it. Welcome World, we're ready. We're established. We established ourselves over the past almost 300 years. Now we just have to share the secret.
Any questions, comments? I have one, and I think I brought this up at the EDC board meeting. It is Warren County LDC. So we need to find a way to make that balance happen, whether it's additional funding to make that, but you still have to kind of live within the constraints that we have. And I'm sure, I think I could help sway the board to say if we're investigating this, it's going to cost us a little bit of money up front. I don't think that's going to be a big issue. I'm not talking about this board, I'm talking about the county board. But I think it's, in my mind, worth exploring.
So I really am sensitive to exactly what you're saying, because I'm the one who's gotten beat down over the last several years trying to get my money through both the county and our other partners. And this goes through cycles. Here's what doesn't go through cycles: the economy. It doesn't know where Essex County begins and Warren County ends, but they go to the doctor at Glens Falls Hospital and they're using Arrow as their bank. So I think what we need to do is also follow our eyes. And in this particular case, I completely agree that we've got to find additional funders and sponsors so that it doesn't look like we are subsidizing this effort on behalf of others. What we are doing, I think, is essentially figuring out how to grow our regional economy. And if we can do that in cooperation with others, particularly I'm thinking about the Community Foundation, if they could step in to provide us with the monies that go beyond the borders of Warren County, but we have one plan that works across that might be the right middle ground. We'll know more by listening to the people who come and talk to us. For instance, I'll give you an example, Hornbeck Boats, it sits in Minerva. Does anybody feel like that is only Essex County's resource? I mean, those canoes are on bodies of water not only throughout the park, but all over the world. They just opened up their second shop in Minnesota. Who's gonna help them? There's a part-time IDA person in Essex County. Their dad and mom are passed away. The proprietors of that business live in Saratoga and here. Do we want Hornbeck Boats to continue? I think we do. They're to me an example of this stuff that's in this netherworld. And I'm not sure you would find anybody who wouldn't want to see that continue to operate from the base that it's at right now and from its history and be all that it can possibly be. Wouldn't it be great if they manufactured twice as many boats in Minerva as they do today? I think it would. And I completely understand the sensitivities of this. I also look at the opportunities and say, we've got to figure out a way.
All right, this is a similar strategy to the one that Gary Douglas used in Clinton County when he reached out to Southern Quebec. And they ended up strengthening their economy so significantly because they looked at their region in a broader sense than just the county borders. I think that's the opportunity. But to your point, I think we have to be careful in making sure that to the extent that we're providing service, that there is a tangible return on investment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It could be, you know, if they're doing business at they're participating with our healthcare system.
Yeah.
You know, there could be some ways to measure that to say it's worth our effort to do that. But
This is the feedback I want. And even if it's not always what I want to hear, we gotta have it. And to me, we're at the front end of this, and we have a lot of flexibility in how we execute this. What we'll do is start reporting to you about, from this point on, next time we talk to you, there will be real stuff where we really gather people and they'll be starting to provide us with things we can mull over together.
Well, I've been around Jim with one entrepreneur that's around here. It adds value. It definitely adds value. And I have a little business also, right? You wonder, is it worth expanding? Is it worth trying something new? How do I go about that? These two guys would be part of the list in terms of who I go to. And letting people know that that's available to them, I think is a true value. Right? And maybe we can come down here, right? Or somewhere in Warren County where they can keep them going.
And I think you're right, Jim, too. I'm just sitting there thinking about it. You know, Screw Lake successes is Chestertown successes. It's not that far away. Tucking Road is on fire right now. Is what's going to save hay and development in that area. So I think that the next generation that's going to fill all these seats won't see those lines. I really believe.
So you're saying get rid of us?
I'm sorry?
Get rid of us?
Well, they want to.
I'm not sure if you were copied on it, Bob, but somebody from the city sent out a piece that went in some publication, talked about the 8 communities to consider living in the Adirondack Park. And the number 1 was Glens Falls. And it wasn't just because it was one of the larger ones, it was because it is essentially seen by the outside world as the gateway to it. Now, every other community was a derivative of Glens Falls. Every other community, they talked about its healthcare relative to the healthcare that you can secure in Glens Falls, or the professional services, or the amenities, or the access to various, resources. But there was no question that Glens Falls was seen as the tip of that entire discussion of an area that's the size of some states. And we oftentimes think of ourselves as, Glens Falls is the epicenter of Warren County. The outside world was telling us Glens Falls is the epicenter of what anybody would see as the Adirondacks. Even we don't see ourselves this way. And it's a pretty good article, and it's pretty objective. And, it basically says Saranac is a lesser version of Glens Falls. Maybe not quite that way, but, its resources relative to Glens Falls are a fraction of what Glens Falls has. We have to figure out how to leverage those for maximum benefit if our place is going to be sustainable. But it's also an indication to me of the possibility of potential. We are not going to have to try to convince people that we could be that. We simply have to convince people that we're up to it.
And just, we were all aware of what was happening during COVID, and what happened with our housing. As someone who owns a house, I'm pretty happy with knowing what happened to the asset my house is now. But we had a lot of people coming from out of town, seniors, retirees, right? So it's a big challenge for us to kind of keep this economy going, workforce and businesses. And if we can get more entrepreneurial people to get here to expand, more than just a 1 or 2 person place, but somebody that's building a business that's hiring 10, 20, 50 people will make a big difference. So
We have some work to do around some of our loan recipients, so I want to make sure that we get to that.
just any other comments from the board?
Excellent.
Stephen? Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your efforts. Jim. Next order of business is an executive session, if applicable. I understand it is, but Jim can help us kind of go through the legal aspects of what an executive session, what we're trying to address.
So let me tell you why we would potentially enter into an executive session, and then somebody can make a movement to do that. We clearly need to talk about the potential litigation of one of our loan recipients. And that's a basis for going into executive session. We have choices, and my suggestion is we go into executive session, understand what those are, and then we come out of executive session to take whatever action we deem to be appropriate.
So a motion to go into executive session to discuss potential litigation.
So Bob,
Yep. Second by Nancy. Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Where we go? Thank you, Eric.
You got it.